pamięć, rozumiesz? Ty masz tutaj być i masz na mnie czekać, ponad mnie się czeka ze mną, że jest kurwa i mnie się planuje cały czas, rozumiesz? So our first subject matter is Sala samobójców, Henrik. What is this film about? Was this the fastest starting ever in this podcast?
This very much could be the record on when it comes to actually getting to the point.
But fooled you. But Henrik, World Health Organization, its primary care physician's suicide prevention guide, has a sequence of questions for possible suicidal people. Do you feel helpless, unhappy, Henrik?
Well, I am a film podcaster after all.
Do you feel despair?
Well, bi-weekly every Sunday. Yeah.
Do you feel like you can't last the next day?
hell, I feel like I can't last this session.
Do you feel that life is too much of a burden for you?
Well, I don't know about life. I don't know about life. The podcast and you most definitely, yeah, but...
Do you feel life is not worth living?
Well... Well, I mean, come on. We actually, bi-weekly, every Sunday, we two come together to talk about things that are not real and not real life. We come here to talk about fiction twice every month. So I don't know. Maybe you and we have a problem when it comes to actually living a life.
Well, I can't argue against that. Do you ever think about killing yourself?
Is that even a mystery? Like, you can for that question you can just go through our backlog and
Honestly, these questions are a little bit, I don't know, like everybody probably would give the kind of quote unquote wrong answer for this. It would make me look like a suicidal person if I would answer these questions as well. So but honestly, I'm all right. I'm still here, as is Henrik, my friendly co-host.
Yeah, we kind of have to. We have to be here, whether we like it or not. Because after 2 weeks we have to once again do an episode. So.
Yeah, like a couple of days ago, I gave a little bit of a lesson for primary schoolers on podcasting, and as you kind of eloquently put it, what was it again?
There are easier ways to ruin your life than to become a podcaster.
Yeah, this is a trap. This is a trapping. You will be stuck with this if you take it seriously enough. Well, I guess we do. I don't know. All right. So we studied media and started a film podcast. Every other week we talk about international cinema here. Sometimes we go to Hollywood. This week we're going to do Poland once again. What gives? It's probably my history with Poland. That is.
It might very much be your history with Poland.
No bias whatsoever. But what are we talking about today, Henrik?
We are covering the rest of the filmography of Jan Komasa.
Oh.
A director who has previously been visited in this podcast. Was it like a year ago?
It's starting
how
to be.
Long is it?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, God, we have done this for ages. But but we did one episode where we centered purely on his more religious feature, Corpus Christi, which translates something in Polish.
Boże, Ciało.
Yeah, precisely that. And today we are taking a look the last 3 of his 4 feature films.
Absolutely. So, I thought that Jan Komasa is one of the more fascinating, maybe the most big names in directing and film-wise in Poland right now. So I thought it would be a really good idea to look at the rest of his filmography. His first film especially is something that really seemed to resonate with the youth, and it made kind of huge waves and was quite successful internationally as well. Yeah, we're talking about the three of his big films that remains to be talked about in this podcast. Those are Sala samobójców, or Suicide Room, the Hejter, and Miasto, or in otherwise Warsaw 44. Kind of a Second World War action flick, or what could you call it? But Jan Komasa, he was born in 1981 in Poznan, Henrik, alma mater of National Film School of Łódź, the famous film school in Poland. A lot of talent, seriously, a lot of international talent coming out of this school all the time. His family is very artistic. He was raised in Warsaw, and his father played a role in Schindler's List. And Jan Komasa, was able to meet Steven Spielberg, which of course made a huge impression, and then he considered filmmaking as a career path. That's one way of trapping yourself, I guess. Talking of his other works that we're not going to delve deep into tonight, he recently has been doing the Ultraviolet TV series by AXN for Netflix. And it's a collaboration with scriptwriter Wendy West, who has worked, for example, on Dexter. Also, the star of The Hejter, Maciej Musiałowski, has appeared in this series. He has also directed the Warsaw Uprising documentary from 2014, where it uses actual archive footage from the Second World War during the Warsaw Uprising, and they have colored these pictures as well as added audio and made it into a kind of a fictional story of sorts.
How is it fictional? I have heard the similar claim that it's somehow groundbreaking in the way how it incorporates fictional elements, but I haven't seen the doc myself, so I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's kind of like you would have a soldier in one image, and I'm pretty sure that the filmmakers were not able to know what the hell was being said during each of these shots, because it's just random archive footage, and then they kind of have lip synced in some way what they could have been speaking there, and I understand this way they are telling a story.
Okay. Sounds at least pretty interesting experiment.
Yeah, it had 700,000 viewers in Polish cinemas and was indeed released in the same year that the Miasto 44 was released, so tackling these same kind of topics at that time.
Yeah, I understood that was done the whole project as some kind of a celebration of the anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising.
Indeed. And then there is Ode to Joy. It's a triptych, how the fuck do you say it? Feature film. 3 directors were working on this, and there are 3 short stories in the film. It's, quote, 3 stories of young disillusioned Poles of different background and region of origin. What binds them together is that they all meet on the bus to London shortly after Poland's entry into the EU. Unfortunately, haven't seen it. And in 2003, there is this film that is more accessible, I suppose. The short film, made in the Łódź Film School times of Jan Komasa, directed the film at age 21 with the help of Łódź Film School, called Nice to See You, from 2003, or Fajne, że jesteś, and it won the 3rd prize at Cannes Film Festival. Well, it's a film that doesn't tell you what is really wrong, but there is a character, the daughter of a father, as it happens, and the father visits the daughter in this dormitory or this flat where she resides, and the father wants the daughter to come back home. But there is some kind of a schism between these characters. The daughter goes looking for tea all over the goddamn dormitory, is not able to find it, is doing different stuff, and in the meanwhile, the father is already leaving the premises. Kind of interesting, thought-provoking. Unfortunately, I didn't use too much time to delve too much into it, but well, any thoughts, Henrik?
Not really. Like, since we once again are looking at the director, the larger take on his films, I would say our job today is try to find some commonalities between the movies, gotta find out what the director is saying. And when it comes to his first short film, I really didn't find that much common ground with his larger feature movies. It's very obviously it's done during the film school days. Like there is that student quality to the short, and kind of what I saw in it that can kind of tie to this larger theme that Komasa kind of comes back to in all of his movies would be the disconnect between people. In Nice to See You, I kind of took it that the daughter is constantly making connections. She has made connections within the dorm. She has friends. She has people who turn to, but while she has made those connections, yes, she has kind of somehow lost a connection to her boyfriend and to her father. So there is that kind of a kind of same way as in Suicide Room. That you have your close ones, your loved ones, your family, and that connection is somehow broken. Then you have this another community or a group of a set of people, and where you have broken the connection to those who naturally would be considered to be your close ones, you actually have a tighter connection to that second set of characters.
This film is accessible and completely legally for everybody who goes to YouTube to Which Film School's YouTube channel. There's something that somebody called Piotr Pławoszewski has written about the film. Quote, Komasa has managed to show people who actually mean nothing to themselves in a neat, condensed form. You can go to bed with a boyfriend without even knowing his real name. My friend will let her worried head rest on her shoulder, but a moment later, without a hint of emotion in her voice, she will ask for the money she has borrowed, end quote, and so on and so forth. You can read the description under the video. So, but maybe moving on to our prime victims of the night. There are some kind of heavy thematic connections between Suicide Room and the Hejter movies, so maybe we could first start with the film that is kind of the odd one out, Miasto 44. So
that might actually be the best, because Miasto is perhaps the weirdest single film from Komasa's filmography, and I kind of fear that if we would insert Miasto between Suicide Room and The Hejter, we would kind of break the flow. We would start with a heavy topical movie and quite slow burn one, and then all of a sudden would talk about Miasto and then return back to heavy slow burn. So I don't know, perhaps we can kind of open this episode with a bang and talk about the most Hollywood-esque movie in Komasa's filmography.
Yeah, perhaps the most successful film of Jan Komasa as well, and probably the one with the biggest budget. But yeah, this was made in 2014 as a kind of anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising events. The script was already written in some form in 2006, and so it took 8 years to produce. There was a lot of financing that was put into this film. It got kind of mixed reviews. If you look at the DVD extras, of course, of the film. You see the war veterans in the crowd seeing the film at the kind of the central stadium of Warsaw, where they gather to see the movie, and many seem to have kind of only positive things to say. I don't know, but it's quite fantastical sometimes, and I don't know how much that resonates with people who actually might have experienced these events.
Yeah, I don't need either. The case with Miasto is that it's it's kind of much. It's kind of hard to, at least I found it kind of hard to say exactly where Komasa wants to go with this film.
In many ways, actually, because if you take the central characters, you have the protagonist who, yes, loses kind of himself, loses his kind of will to live, or he's actually in sort of a coma, catatonic state for more than maybe 80% of the film, and just standing by the windows while things are about to explode. And I don't know if I should feel that way, but I do feel that it's kind of irritating that the lady character has to save his ass all the time. Not because she's a lady or whatever, but because she has to save him so many goddamn times from the situations, and it's only by the end of the film when he starts to kind of wake up.
Yeah, it is. It's a case where the main female character Pietronka, like our point of view character Stefan, he's almost like comatose for most of the film, and has to be dragged from point A to point B by Pietronka. This, of course, that the film makes the case is result from Stefan's traumatization as he witnesses some of the horrors of the siege of Warsaw, and some of the personal losses that he goes through. Yeah. But even though there is understandable character emotional reason for Stefan being like he is, it does not change the fact that, well, Stefan still most of the film is completely kind of a cut out, both action and emotion wise, from the events of what goes around him. He's so closed off into his own world in those moments that whatever happens, it just happens around him. It doesn't happen truly to him, and he ceases from being an active part or active participant in his own story, and just becomes someone who is being carried by someone else.
That is true, and I don't know where the film is kind of going with this, because Stefan is being Stefan. He's always just leaving Pietronka somewhere, and despite that, Pietronka is always coming back while not looking particularly happy about it. And then, you know, they come together by the end of the movie once again. They randomly find themselves, and then what? What is the kind of what is the story of the goddamn film? It's just showing us kind of a separated events happening during the Warsaw Uprising, highly fantastical in a way of slow motion and kind of like a bullet time events happening here. Actually, I kind of, in a way, I understand that this would probably not really be workable for people who actually experienced something like this in Warsaw Uprising. But I don't have a problem with those effects per se. In fact, those effects are the reason why I chose to buy Corpus Christi later in the local store, because I found that this is kind of an interesting, this guy is kind of creative and personal, and he could probably do something great as well as he did with the Corpus Christi Oscar-nominated film.
Well, I must give Komasa credit that Miasma 44, it's a war film that I have never seen another one like it.
I bet.
Like, and with that I mean it's one of the funniest war films I've seen. I was actually cackling, breaking in laughter as the film was going on, and that unfortunately does not work well for the film itself. To me, it led into a major disconnect with the movie, where I started to see that the film as kind of a comedy, like a wartime comedy, something like where you have a crazy bunch of characters who go into the funny adventurous story behind the enemy lines. There's Nazis over there, and you work your way through them. It started to be me like Kelly's Heroes, or some of these American war comedies. And then all of a sudden that the film still tries to go extremely heavily into the dramatical end. Like you have a lot of if you haven't gotten used to it, or depending on how much war films you've seen, either cliched visuals or then extremely shocking visuals. This is kind of a question of exactly how much war media you have consumed. You have the implied rape of a civilian. The image is shocking. It's also an image that basically everyone have done. You have mass executions of civilians. Once again, image is shocking. Also, name me a film that hasn't done that. You have very graphic fight scenes. You have whole parts of bodies. Once again, everything that is as images are shocking, also something that you have seen. And the film wants you to be shocked and be appalled by what you are being seen. It wants you to kind of feel this, or I'm guessing it wants you to feel this emotional drain as you are being exposed for the human cruelty that I very strongly believe did really happen in Warsaw during the Nazi siege.
Right. But even the graphic scenes where somebody's, for example, the staircase scene where of course, you shouldn't ever smile in a war movie because you get your fucking head blown off. And it blows off in a pretty graphic way, and the way that it's pushed is kind of something from, I don't know, some overblown horror film. And maybe it was trying to be realistic, but I felt that it's pushed a little bit too much to be kind of... It's starting to be very cartoonish in a way. And yeah, of course, we were talking about all of this kind of a intentionally misplaced, as you said, humorous scenes. There's one scene where they're walking, is it underground, and there's some techno music playing. I believe this director has something for techno music because it's also something that we get in Corpus Christi, and soundtracks in general, some of which are pretty damn good. But there's that, and then the bullet time kiss, let's say.
Yeah, and to me, the major problem, since you mentioned these scenes, to start off with the staircase scene, my main like the problem that started to form for me was a bit before the staircase scene, as they are storming the building, in which is very lightweight situation. It's almost like an adventure movie. They're like in its feeling. It feels like this kind of like casual adventure where there's some danger, but nothing too terminal could happen to these characters, which I do get. I do get at this point still, because that does feed from the way how the characters think that the Warsaw uprising is gonna go, where it's just going to be this short 3-day stitch. They just quickly say fuck it to the Nazis and do some shooting, and then it's over and they can go back home. So to Stefan and his friends, at that point the uprising still can be just, a zany adventure that you do like this one summer when we uprised against the Nazis. And in that way, the tone of the film still holds true. Then comes the first casualty of their uprising, or for that group. One of their friends, as you mentioned, gets shot in the head, and it's very graphic. And Stefan witnesses this point blank, like looks his friends straight into his friend's dead eyes, which now is once again, this is kind of a heavy emotional sink moment in the film. This is kind of a moment where Stefan understands what death and war is like, and it's supposed to hit him home that holy shit, this is not an adventure. This is like a real thing. And that death is followed by a scene where Stefan storms the room where the Nazis are. Just before that, they have thrown grenade into the room, so there has been an explosion. Stefan storms in and sees there's bodies there, and notices that one of the Nazis has not died. Nazi pulls a Luger. Stefan tries to run away. Slips from a severed hand lying on the ground, like steps on the hand and slips. And like that's kind of I laughed at that moment. That to me that was comedic. It's the same thing as in Alien Covenant. Where the film is showing you that, oh my god, the alien is bursting into a person's back, and there's a pool of blood lying on the medbay floor, and the characters run into the pool of blood and they just slip and fall over. And you laughed at Alien Covenant, I laughed at Miasma 44. That once again, from there we kind of resort back to the this is an adventure feeling for quite some time. That the cinematography is extremely bright, extremely colorful. Nobody seems that they are too traumatized by the events. Not even Stefan, who almost got shot. He's kind of I'm fine. All the characters are fine. You are being shown that there's a child soldier in the uprisingers group.
Jew, yeah.
No. This is the little kid who climbs into the tree to be a spotter to tell if the Nazis are coming. They are now at the graveyard. They are taking a break there. There's this really small kid who is part of the group, and they raise him to the tree like, work as a spotter for us. And there's some casual talks how some character explains to Stefan how they are really in deep shit, and well, this is war and it's not gonna be over in 3 days. In the background you see how the kid now being shot falls from that tree. All havoc breaks loose, and then you have the moment when Stefan is slow-mowing through Nazi gunfire at the cemetery. And you're kind of like, oh no.
Yeah, you
having the Max pain feelings where you instant bullet dodge. And from there you get to the kiss scene you mentioned. There's a Nazi patrol that goes eye of Pietronka and notices her and open fire, and Stefan like leaps through the air. Before this, the Nazis open fire, Stefan leaps through the air, catches Pietronka, and they dive to safety. And following that, they both stand up and they share a passionate kiss. And the Nazi gunfire is coming straight at them, but all the bullets miss the two lovers because the power of love.
That's how I took it.
Yeah.
Literally kind of doing well, okay. They are maybe ricocheting from the walls, but in a way that they will change direction still,
Yeah.
At will.
Yeah. Because when Warsaw uprising happened, I guess those people just didn't love enough. Like, would have made them impervious to bullets, says the film. And from there we once again we get to from there we get to the implied rape, we get to the mass executions of civilians, we get all this really traumatic war stuff. Stefan becomes completely kind of disconnected from everything. He breaks away from his military crew. He essentially defects or becomes a deserter at that point. And Piotranka drags him all over Warsaw from one safe place to the next. And then one night, Stefan just chooses to leave his one girl, the love of his life, and returns back to the war band that he has previously deserted, and then has just casual sex with another woman.
Yeah.
This being being Kama, and then there is the dressman walk techno sewer scene that you mentioned, where they all walk in really cool poses, and there's that like slow movement. It's really cool, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on? And
you could even say that the film is a little bit, if you want to see it that way, it could be also depicted as a juvenile film, in the way that there is this young guy who has graduated just the Łódź famous film school, and here I am, and I know all the filming techniques, and then he decides to do this kind of a fantasy World War II film as one of his kind of first features.
It kind of feels like that. I don't know juvenile, but
yeah,
it very much feels like Komasa is pulling all the tricks that he has gathered at this point, just to show exactly how much different techniques he knows how to use. Like, here's a bullet time, 3D bullets going on. Here's a slow motion walk scene. Here's a point of view from the barrel, or from a gunner's point of view. That's actually pretty neat. I must give it that much. But there's like all these different techniques at play. And at some point, it starts to feel like Komasa is just showing off.
And I thought that the kind of a perspective of the gun was a bit distracting. It took me out of the film, I'm afraid.
It does that. It does do that.
Yeah.
I to kind of go back on my statement, I did really enjoy it on technical level. I thought it looked cool. It was a nice point of view. It's not too often used.
But though it's now like a video game.
Yeah, it actually made it look like a video game.
Yeah,
and
juvenile is not my own word, actually. I should say that. But there have been some online opinions that say that it's even juvenile,
and I can see where those opinions come from, because once again, this is the moment where the film feels like it's two different beasts. Like, you have the really heavy stuff, which is the wartime atrocities, and then you have those bullet time sequences, and you have the slow-mo walking, and all of that, and that can also be described as juvenile.
But what I did really enjoy in the film is actually kind of the last shot, when it transitions from the CGI exploded bridge that I suppose it's kind of connecting the Prague with the center. Yeah, this is the view. And then you kind of skip to the modern day, and you see how Warsaw has changed and how it's now blossoming, and it's kind of like the director saying that, you should remember your past.
Yeah, it is. Of course, it's borrowed from Scorsese's Gangs of New York, but I do think it works pretty well here. To me, it also, since we have been discussing about exactly what the film tries to portray, I think that's where you actually find the answer. To me, this read a hell of a lot like Gangs of New York, where the film takes this concentrated moment of time, and from that moment of time, it tries to show you a transitioning into a modern day. Like Gangs of New York is supposed to portray you one moment of the societal upheaval within New York, within America, and through that moment of upheaval, to show you kind of the societal and emotional way how America was built. It's not like it does not go through the history of America, but it from taking a looking at essentially something like 1 year in America's history, tries to portray you exactly how the American spirit kinda came to be. And to me, Warsaw 44 kinda aims to do the same. It tries to show you exactly what happened in that small moment in Warsaw's history, and how that led into the Warsaw of today.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel that Jan Komasa was kind of a good choice for this film in a way that I don't view him as someone who is, perhaps, if I could say, overly patriotic. You know, the Polish cinema scene is known for portraying World War II. You know, like there's still so many World War II films coming from Poland that it's crazy. It's kind of their favorite subject artistically in cinema. And I think from this film, at least, it doesn't come off that it would be this kind of a overly patriotic or trying to completely misrepresent or make these characters look overly heroic. There are those crazy heroic moments. I'm sure there were such of a upheaval feeling as well, that, you know, I'm going to come at you and trying to shoot you as much as I can before I die type of scene.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed with that. Or not really mixed in general, but there is a one scene, well, the Jewish liberation scene that happens, where they find a group of Jews that the Nazis have captured, and they set them free. And with that scene, I was kind of wondering exactly, why is this here? Like, what is Komasa's point?
I don't know. Of course, in Poland there is this occasional talk that there would still be a lot of anti-Semitic feelings in Poland, and I don't know, maybe he wanted to just present the Jews in the film, that they would not be definitely forgotten in the film, because it feels that in some public discourse, of course this is talking very generally, but my feeling is that in some public discourse there is this kind of anti-Semitic feelings sometimes raised, or the Jews are kind of forgotten from some of the talking points. So maybe it's something like that. Who knows?
Okay, could be, because in that moment, the only thing that I was actually thinking about was the fact that, well, even though in the film at this moment they are setting the captured Jews free, the Nazis are there, and they are telling them that you guys are free to go. In reality, the Jews that they now have set free, they don't really have anything to go to, because during this time, Polish people were extremely ready to kind of take the property of the captured or the imprisoned Jews for themselves. This basically covering all that the Nazis didn't take themselves, like land and property. The Polish Jews who managed to survive Holocaust then had to enter the world, where they now found a Polish family living in their house, living on their land, and that family was not gonna go anywhere. So the Jews now found themselves homeless. And even though Poland is one of the countries who have signed the Terezin Declaration, which covers the Holocaust-era assets and related issues. As far as I understood, Poland has never followed up the legal regulations that declaration imposes.
Yeah, this is kind of the influences of Jan Komasa, the film. Like I feel that it's like combining, as you said, all the different kind of ways that he wants to. It's kind of, this could be some kind of a student budget film, but it's just received this kind of $1 million production budget, and he's pulling off all this Matrix, Max Payne slow-mos, and the techno music, and a lot of crazy CGI effects. It doesn't totally work.
It doesn't, and the unfortunate downside effect of it not working is that it kind of harms also the scenes that you are supposed to take much more serious.
And he could have used those effects maybe in a more serious fashion.
Something that also kind of bothered me is that a lot of these scenes, they transition even inside that one scene from one emotional tone to a next. Like, to kind of give you a couple of examples where I'm coming from, there's the moment in film when Stefan has just seen his mom and his little brother being executed on the street by the Nazis, and he's traumatized. This is the moments when he's completely catatonic. He comes across Pietronka, who now starts to track him around, and they come into this street where bombing has happened, and the scene starts with people panicking and yelling how there are people trapped inside of some a basement of a fallen down building, and that they need help, that people are dying. Some hospital has been bombed. God knows what. And within that one scene, the tone shifts all of a sudden from this, oh my God, please help, people are trapped and they are dying, to extremely joyous when you have a whole group walking down the exact same street that was bombed 5 seconds ago, celebrating the fact that somebody has found an abandoned Nazi tank and they are driving the tank down the street, and everybody is like, yeah, go us, happy. And then all of a sudden the tank explodes and it starts literally raining blood. Which once again is going back into, this is extremely horrible, but because I was already caught up in the joyous yay moment, or the feeling of that moment, when the blood rain happens, I actually was just laughing. I was just like giggling there. and this is followed by, sometime later in the film, they have to make a hasty escape into sewers.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, you have some light moment where we're having some hope, and then the hope is once again crushed at that same second.
That could be what Komasa was aiming at, but to me, it just didn't have that effect on me.
Yeah, pulling the rug under your feet.
It kind of did that. I did find myself, like I said, laughing at moments which I'm fairly certain that Komasa meant to be extremely horrifying and heartbreaking, but I just didn't get into that emotion.
What did you think about the lead actor playing Stefan? Stefan, who is played by Aku Hirviniemi, born in Riihimäki, a Finnish actor, theater and television background. Yeah.
I wasn't too wild about him. I don't know if this is the actor or if this is the character.
Yeah, it's played actually by Józef Pawłowski, and has starred in Polish films, and a Northern Irish crime thriller might be also kind of a famous product of his. bad day for the cut from 2017. But you will need some serious subtitles to get through that movie because of the accent, unless you're from Northern Ireland.
I haven't seen anything else from him, so can't really say what is his range. But I didn't get into his performance in Warsaw 44. Once again, to me it came off extremely one note. But I don't know if this is because of the actor or because of the character. Because to me, Stefan also is really hard character to pinpoint. He does kind of completely baffling decisions as the film goes on. The biggest one, in my opinion, is the abandonment of Biedronka to her own luck, as Stefan now all of a sudden decides to rejoin the uprising group that he has once been part of. And from there you just get into these moments where he is unfaithful to Biedronka, who he still has feelings for. So he essentially, Kama is reduced to be just a side hoe for Stefan, in lack of a better term. Stefan also appears to be extremely petty about the question that when the first fight scene with the Nazis happened and Stefan managed to grab a hold of Nazi Luger, he was not allowed to keep the pistol. Yeah. Because one of the most repeated plot points that Stefan is most passionate about in course of the film is his need to be able to hold a pistol. Like Stefan having a pistol is a plot point that is revisited in the film in a major fashion.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, it all makes Stefan seem extremely petty.
Yeah, well, he has lost hope, and nothing has any meaning anymore. His family has been shot to death.
Pistol has a hell of a lot of meaning. Yeah. Pistol is more important to him than the love of his life.
The special effects are done largely, if not completely, by a company called UPP. I don't know if you checked the DVD extras how much, but yeah, it's nothing special, I believe, in special effects circles, but it's kind of giving pretty nice tour of all the visual effects that they added into the scenes. And they shot at least some scenes in Łódź where there was this, it's a big factory city, and there's happened to be some kind of a factory ruins there, and then they added elements there and made it look like a war zone. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers Miasto 44 for now. We will get back to it in our summa summarum section, but would it be Suicide Room at this point?
Well, why not? Suicide Room and The Hejter, I would say, being the films that mostly make the meat for today's podcast.
Si, senor. What's your experience with the films, Henrik?
Never actually seen them before. When it comes to Komasa, well, the podcast has always been my... Well, it's always offered me my first experience with any of the films.
A Suicide Room is something that I bought on DVD on Amazon a little time ago, just to kind of complete my Jan Komasa collection. Here we, as a star in the film, we have Jakub Gierschau playing Dominique, born in Kraków. Father is a theater director. The guy, Jakub, he lived his first 11 years in Hamburg, then returned to Poland. So, artistic family. He's a Polish Film Award nominee for Best Actor for Suicide Room. Won Shooting Stars Award that year as well. And got another Best Actor nomination for 2017 biopic movie, which also deals with drugs, Breaking the Limits. Jakub's debut was in All That I Love, Wszystko co kocham, in 2009, drama, which was selected as the Polish entry for Oscars, but wasn't selected for the shortlist. And of course, Suicide Room, and then he has appeared in a minor role in Dracula Untold from 2014.
Which actually is a film that I have seen. I just don't have any recollection of the actor.
Which doesn't surprise me because, well, I haven't seen the film, but I understand it was a minor role still. The Lure 2015, Córki Dancingu. It's a Polish horror musical, a retelling of the Little Mermaid story fairy tale from Hans Christian Andersen. Morris from America, 2016. It's an American-German comedy drama, a small-scale release, but you see that this guy is really trying to get to the international scheme of things as well. He also appeared in Spoor from 2017. It's kind of a heavyweight Polish circle film, Pokot, by Agnieszka Holland, the director. It's a Polish crime film. Agnieszka Holland is also a huge director in Poland, always worth looking into if you're gonna dabble anything in Polish cinema. Alright, I think that covers Jakub Kierschau. And Suicide Room, Sala samobójców, premiered in Berlin Film Festival in 2011. Where do you want to take it from? We have Komasa saying something about the film, which might kind of kickstart our investigations here. Quote, "I would be careful with the audience too young. Under 15, I would rather not risk it, and by the age of 18 it is best to watch the film with adults. The movie is very strong and intense, and it talks about dangerous things. It may be stupid to talk about it, but there have been a few hysterical reactions during the screenings at the Berlinale. The film sometimes evokes extreme emotions." End quote. From Kto jest kim w Sali samobójców documentary film. Yeah. Is it stupid to talk about the kind of the, if we change gear, is it stupid to talk about the subject matters that he's talking about, or are they rather talked in a stupid fashion?
Depends on exactly how you ask that question. Is it just stupid to talk about the subject matters? Most definitely not. Are they talked about in stupid fashion? That kind of depends on, do you mean in general or in this film?
Yeah, I think this film partly suffers some kind of Miasto 44 effect in a way that it has a lot of important subject matters, but then when it comes to kind of building on them and satisfying the experience at the end, bringing it to conclusion, it's not completely there.
I agree with you to a point. Suicide Room is a film that does have some problems in it, and there are points that could have been addressed perhaps more thoroughly. When it, however, comes to Miasto 44, when it comes to the ending, I actually find this really fascinating to compare this movie to Miasto. Because filmmaking, quite often, it's this kind of a rope dance that you do. It's a balancing act. There's a hell of a lot of things that go into movie making. There are basically in every scene you shoot, there are like 50 different things that can go wrong and can, well, fuck up the scene, perhaps even in some cases fuck up the entire movie. So there's a hell of a lot of things that hinges upon, and a lot of risks whenever you make the film. It's always a tightrope dance.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I want to emphasize this point is because Suicide Room and Miasto 44, at least to me, appear to be kind of mirror opposites of each other. Miasto starts with, well, it's based on a real historical event, the Warsaw Uprising, which, as far as I've understood, was extremely extremely horrifying and dramatic moment in time. Overall, the Nazi invasion of Poland
Yeah.
was something that a lot of untold stories
Yeah.
stems from that event. So when you press play for the first time, you are kind of with the movie. It's very easy to expect that this is film that really is gonna work for you. You are really gonna love this. You have seen a lot of really great war movies before. You know, your Saving Private Ryan's, your Thin Red Lines, your Patton's, your The Unknown Soldiers. So you are with the movie when you first started it, and then as the film progresses, it just kind of starts to tumble down into more or less a disaster, and you are just kind of looking at kind of dumbfounded, like, whoa, how, what is going on? Oh no, no, don't, please.
Oh, this is your feeling about the film?
It's my feeling about Miasto 44, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
And
just making the comparison between these in the sense that in Miasto 44 you have a lot of plot elements that are not really, I think, driven to the conclusion, and nothing is kind of done with them, many of them. It's not really the case here. Maybe there are some elements that are not really fulfilled that well, but definitely we're talking about a much more, I think, better built film.
we are, and this is something that kind of filled into my take as Suicide Room and Miasto being mirror opposites.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to Suicide Room, on the other hand, uh, when the film starts, you are kind of on the edge because, well, in case you didn't already deduct it from the title, Suicide Room is dealing with the topic of suicide. Really hard, extremely heavy topic to approach. And as the film starts, you kind of start to see these red flags just popping up. You have your emo main character, you have the depiction of Second Life, of all things, you have the family dynamic, which is kind of, well, how it is. So like I said, the film has problems. And Suicide Room is very much a film that builds up towards its end. Like the entire film, you notice this pretty soon as the film starts, that this is going to be a movie that rides or dies with its ending. The entire movie is building up to the end resolution of its story. So a lot hinges upon from how the film lands its ending. And as you are watching it, you are kind of constantly being like, oh no, oh no, 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 oh god, this is gonna be an absolute shit show once we reach the conclusion. And then you reach the conclusion, and at the conclusion, where Miasto 44 suffered from the fact that Komasa didn't show restraint, in Suicide Room, at its ending, Komasa shows remarkable amount of restraint and does, in my opinion, not really fuck up the ending, and actually ends up making a film that you come off like, this actually is working. Like, holy shit. Like, even though you were dead certain that this is gonna be a dumpster fire, once you reach the conclusion, all of a sudden you find a film that you actually think is pretty damn good.
Okay, yeah, a lot of interesting points right there. But let's give a little bit of a roundup of what the hell we're up against here tonight. So, this is a film that, yes, was kind of influential and a big hit in Poland. Also a film that definitely Poland had not really seen before. And this is coming from this first-time feature director, directed in 2011, Jan Komasa. And oh boy, yes, indeed, a very tough subject matter. And here it comes. It was a huge kind of a teenager phenomenon, I would even say. And maybe the biggest question, insofar as you can read kind of people's reaction to the film, is that does it depict the suicide matter in a way that is fair, and is it okay that young people see this kind of film, and what does it want to say for these young people? And that's a lot of questions, of course. But I would go with Jan Komasa here, that this is something that I'm not sure I would recommend for people under 15 for sure, or even under 18 necessarily. Because these might fuck up the kid to the wrong direction. On the other hand, it's also what I think the film is mainly doing is communicating to the audience that, yeah, please don't do this, and recognize where the faults lie in. Parents have to take responsibility for their kids, and kind of look up to them a little bit more and see where they're going. And you cannot simply just concentrate on your career and ignore your children.
Yeah, I don't know about the danger of this kind of a fucking up anybody. I don't see this really having that much power over people. I would also perhaps recommend the film. Well, not to anyone under age 15.
Mm.
I would draw the recommendation line to 15-year-old. Not because that the film itself is really that dangerous, or because I would believe that there could be like harmful side effects with this film. Not also because I would think that the film would be so horrifying that you would get nightmares from seeing it. When it comes to, well, it mostly is actually pretty tame movie when it comes to visuals and presentation. The very last shots notwithstanding, it's the most roughest treatment you are going to get. Is at the very end, and even in there you don't really get anything that graphic. So on that level, but the reason why I kind of see this as a 15 plus movie would be the subject matter, and kind of because suicide always is very heavy. It's very loaded. There's a lot that goes into the question of suicide, both in philosophical and in societal form. And I do think that a film that tries to have or tries to make a serious argument about suicide is perhaps a film that you get more perhaps from that movie if you experience it a little bit older, when you perhaps have already have your first touches with the questions that that tie to the topic.
Yeah, I think it's coming from a very, very right place, and I really love the shift that happens at the end in a way. Although I'm not sure still kind of how should I read everything about it, but the fact that Sylvia is the character who is kind of an evil character who lures Dominique into this world of depression. Also maybe gives some kind of a support, but essentially she's selling a lot of these bad ideas that I want to die, give me pills to kill myself. And then it shifts, and after having spent time with these ideas, Dominique then seems to have kind of shifted his views towards that maybe I should kill myself after all and use these pills instead. But I thought it was kind of interesting that he was in the toilet kind of throwing down the pills, but then it's kind of it's kind of a battle of the brain. He doesn't really want to go there and put those pills down his throat, but then there is some kind of a force that kind of takes over him, and he takes them anyway. And as we have talked about before in this podcast, suicide is not the kind of thing that just happens out of the blue. Here, Well, I guess the same kind of analogy works here. That if you have a gun, you're more prone to do gun violence. If you have pills, you're more easier target for suiciding yourself if you have already any of those thoughts here. And I think that works here. I think this is something that could totally happen. I haven't been suicidal in my life, so I can comment further, but I would say that this is fair.
On my end, I didn't actually experience Sylvia being any kind of a bad or evil character. In fact, to me, I kinda saw more Sylvia's kind of, or I better saw Sylvia's place where she was coming off from character than Dominique's position. And this may be something where perhaps, well, since we mentioned that the film does have some problems, this may be something that is result of those problems. One of the problems that the film does have, to name two, would be first that Dominique's family, when it comes to the family interactions, they are actually quite heavily on the nose and quite cliche. Like you have the not caring parents who are like super not caring.
I know.
Like these parents couldn't give a less shit. It's a miracle that these parents even know what their son's first name is, and most likely that is because they had to once write it down on a birth certificate.
Then again, I fear that this might actually be kind of reflecting very real situations sometimes in Poland, where, well, it's not only Poland, but I feel that there is some kind of a disconnect between the parents and the children, in a way, coming from kind of a completely different eras, and the other one is really oriented towards their career, and they're speaking kind of a completely different language sometimes.
The disconnect does exist.
Yeah.
There's no even a question about it. Anyone who spends any time with well, teens, youngsters, kids, you name it, especially anyone who also spends time with their parents, will pick up that there's a disconnect. There's also the kind of the broken language that you mentioned that exists also. When it comes to being this level, well, I wouldn't say, like might be some cases, but I wouldn't say that is in any way is typical.
Mm. But coming back to the kind of a shift that happens, that was interesting, is that now Dominic suicides himself, to give slight, spoilers in this podcast, but nothing new. That's what we do here. And then Sylvia, after years and years, 3 years of being apparently in her flat, comes finally outside and just to scream at the yard. No. Which way was it actually? What was it that in the end Sylvia had some kind of a feeling that she wanted to live, and obviously she cared a great deal about Dominique. Somehow this is it's a huge emotional moment for Sylvia that Dominique leaves this world. Kind of Dominique leaves and Sylvia stays, at least for the duration of the film. Was it just kind of Sylvia's angst? Did she really want to kill herself? I wonder. Supposedly, yes.
In my opinion, most definitely yes.
Yeah.
When it comes to Sylvia's and the portrayal of a self-harming, suicidal character, and I don't know if this is the script or if this is the actress, and this of course also is a topic where there is no one type of self-harming, one type of suicidal, like there is no mode for depressed or suicidal people. So and with that out of the way, you can't really say that any cinematic portrayal of such person is ever really complete or whole. And everyone who comes across as a suicidal person, of course, has a different experience on what type of people or what type of person that person is. But I would say that Sylvia was actually pretty interesting depiction of a of a person who has self-destructive tendencies, and even actually remarkably believable depiction of such person.
Maybe it's just the case that she doesn't really have any motivation to talk anybody on a webcam, but that she was just using Dominique from the beginning to just get those pills. Of course, later she finds feelings towards Dominique, but that's the kind of the starting point for me, and it's the starting point of the fall of Dominique thanks to Sylvia.
I kind of took it that the feelings were there before the pills.
But how do you feel that this suicide room is any kind of a support group for anybody here? Well, Dominique says that he gets a lot of support from this group. But then there's the name suicide room, of course, and then there is the subject of Sylvia and the fact that they're all trying to kill themselves. So what kind of support exactly? Of course, Sylvia all the time mentions that, you're Dominique, you're not the kind of person that wants to leave this world. You are the kind of person that wants to live, which I guess wasn't the case.
When it comes to the whole question, is suicide room a support room for self-destructive personalities? It's kind of hard to answer really, because this is one of the areas where what is supportive is not really clear. Like answering the question from the point of view, is suicide room a support group for suicidal people suffering from suicidal tendencies in the typical manner, like you and I would easily understand a support group? No, it's not. There's no like elderly granny type of lady in her knit sweater offering tea and biscuits and being like, don't kill yourself. It's not in like that does not exist in suicide room. This is very closed bubble of people who all share at least some level of self-harming tendencies and who are in the risk group of self-harm, and there is no any kind of outside authority or any presentation of any character or any person who would not share these feelings and would still be part of the group or the room. But then again, when we are dealing with these types of emotions, when we are dealing with this type of kind of disconnect from the world, you might not actually get the support you need from that granny. You actually could find even more and better and more helpful support for yourself from a group of people who actually share the exact same point of view that can emphasize with the way how you feel. Because something that often plays a part when it comes to the idea of you supporting someone who is in risk of self-harm. One major factor is the fact that do you really understand where that person is coming from? And you can't understand it truly unless you share the same type of feelings. Like if you haven't ever been suicidal, if you haven't felt it, you can't really truly understand how a suicidal person thinks or how he or she feels and sees the world. And because of that, you can't really ever truly connect. You can try to do it and you can be a helpful influence for that person. But there's always going to be that disconnect that stems from the fact that you never truly ever understand what that person is going through.
And this is why I think it's a really important discussion that the film is evoking here. And maybe it's kind of helpful for this generational divide and for both sides of seeing what is wrong with each side and how can we get more closer to each other?
In a sense, yes. And at the other hand, at the same time, no. Because at the end, even though I did find some really good depictions of a self-harming personality, especially in case of Sylvia, I didn't think that the film it didn't manage to open that mind space enough for this film to work any kind of an educational piece on exactly how self-harming person what that person is going through.
But you said that this film really seems to work here. What was the part that really worked for you here?
Sylvia, essentially. Okay. And the fact that I didn't get the feeling that this film was actually shaming and condemning suicide.
No.
The main problems that I have when it comes to the way how the film approaches suicidal tendencies is the fact that there are two problems. The first one is the fact that Jan Komasa decides to use extremely artistic depiction of internet message boards. He uses this for storytelling and dramatic effect. I can understand why this is done in cinematic, like in cinematic sense, but at the same time, I do think that in here the artistic depiction takes so much room from the suicide room itself.
You mean the film or the actual room?
The actual room. The virtual space that the film shows to you.
Then again, the film spends a lot of time in the suicide room, I found.
It spends.
And even to a point where it might be irritating for some people.
It spends a lot of time there, yes. But what does it do in suicide room?
Well,
how much suicide room really like makes you understand the mind space of a self-harming individual, and how much does it show you, well, there's a burning tree that somebody blendered into the background and animated.
Yeah, but there are some things that you get. More it's about, I think, what can lead into a suicide still, even if it doesn't really talk about all of the reasons. But, you know...
Well, when it comes to what can lead into suicide, this is where I think the second kind of mistake happens. And this results from the fact that your point of view is Dominic, who obviously at the beginning of the film does have problems. He's self-withdrawn, and obviously that the family is dysfunctional. But at the same time, you don't really know what is the mental and emotional coming off point with the character when the film starts. Like during the first minutes, you are not aware exactly how deep in depression and in suicidal behavior Dominique is at this moment in time. And this becomes problem because the timeline of the film actually, in my opinion, is kind of a nightmare to follow. It gives you a ticking clock, which is the final exams, which happens in 100 days. So you have some time frame from there. And then the characters make a point that at some point, during one point in the film, Dominic now has been closed in his own room for 10 days. And at some point, Dominic also misses the final exams. So from the beginning of the film to the very end of the movie, over 100 days have happened. But you don't exactly know how many days and what is the emotional point of Dominique in any, like, in any given moment in film? Like, whenever parents mention that the final exams are coming, has it now been, does Dominique do have 30 days, 50 days, 60 days, how much he has still time after the exams pass, exactly how how much, like how many times that there has been since the exams was
well,
to the ending of the film.
It's something that the parents are very worried about, that they want their kid to be in good mental health so that he will be able to graduate, do the matura. But it's not something that the film itself really cares about. It's just the parents' head.
And it should care about that question, because since the film does, in my opinion, does not manage to tell you exactly how deep in suicidal thinking Dominic is in the beginning of the film, that time frame actually starts to propose the question exactly how quickly Dominic does become suicidal. If he's not that in the very beginning, like in the opening shot of the movie, when you first meet him at the school, if he's not suicidal then that means that it's 100 plus X days, and Dominic comes from not suicidal to suicidal. And that's kind of from 1 to 0. Like, I had 2 Skype calls. I'm now thinking about killing myself.
I didn't get that. There are some plantations done there when this video goes viral with Dominique kissing with the other guy who seems to have some kind of a nefarious goals. By the way, interesting that the friend character seems to have 0 consequences when it comes to the video, whereas in Dominique is shit-talked around the school. And even when there's this second video done with this kind of a shadow hands.
But doesn't the shit talking start only after the judo incident?
Well, there's the kiss,
but everybody comments positively about the kiss. Like there are remarks to the kissing video, yes. Like in the film that they are having a prom. To those who haven't seen the film, that there's a prom dance, and during the dance, that the kids get a bit tipsy and they start to propose dares to each other. The guys dare two girls to kiss each other, and the girls make the counter dare that if we kiss, you two have to kiss also. And then they both kiss, and when Dominic and his friends kiss, somebody films it and it's put on social media. And Dominic follows this post and sees these comments, how it's hot and how they really seem to enjoy it, and when at this point still Dominic appears to be kind of smiling to these. So they are not really harming him, these comments. Everybody seems to be, well, still on the fact that, well, it was a joke that was done on a prom. No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Later in the film, they have the judo practice, where Dominic ends up in a chokehold. And during that hold, Dominic gets an erection and orgasms, which is something that his friend sees. And the friend tells other people about what happened in the judo. And after that, the comments, they change.
Completely.
Like with the kiss, it was just like fun. It was a joke, but now Dominic is being painted out as gay.
And the sexuality in the film kind of goes all over the place. We could see that this is maybe Dominic kind of experimenting himself. Obviously has some kind of sexual feelings towards the same sex, but seems to also have some sexual mannerisms towards Sylvia's direction. For example, the fantasy dance that happens in the bar later on. And so some commenters have said that, well, this gay stuff is not really driven into completion. I didn't really see anything to complete here. It's just a kid who might be a bit confused or might be a little bit all over the place. And
might be just bisexual.
Might be just bisexual, yeah. And that's it. So didn't have any problem with this. But yeah, the attitudes completely shift. I find that this is great because this film is still treating young people seriously, taking the young people's position here. A movie for young people, and mostly succeeds in the storytelling. What happens now after the sperm judo incident? Did you have any problem here in the follow-up?
And not really, except the occasional cringe factor that perhaps creeps in some scenes. Some scenes were kind of uncomfortable to watch.
But the internet public humiliation is something that starts to work on the psyche of this kid who comes from a rich family background, basically has everything, even has a personal driver to drive him around. But still he feels empty, maybe as empty as some poor person. Or maybe like a person as Sylvia, who doesn't seem to be coming from any kind of a rich background.
Yeah, Dominic is from the get-go. Dominic it is clear that there's some tensions in school. That there's some bullying, even though, in my opinion, it seemed extremely mild when you are first shown it. This is before the judo incident, and Dominic obviously is very sensitive person.
Interesting point happens where Dominique is encouraged once again by Sylvia to kind of change his appearance or just do what the hell he wants, to kind of to battle the bullies at school and just look them directly in the eye. It's a kind of interesting point raised. Should people be more worried about people who suddenly change their appearance into emo or start behaving differently? Could this be people at suicide risk?
Well, quite often that's being tied into, well, the risk of school shooting in public discourse. Somebody drastically changing his public physical appearance. It's one of those that quite often are given to you as a red flag
But
of a transforming a school shooter, which of course is perhaps, depending on your take, bit problematic in the film also, because this is also the moment when Dominic himself brings the pistol to the school.
he does. He can't quite get there to start shooting people or anything, but brings the gun to school. As mentioned, the film is kind of heavy on the video game subject. Here, though, I don't think that you have anything to complain about the video game aspect. It wasn't brought into the table as something negative itself. It's just a way of communication and not negative as a video game.
Not not in the sense how the film portrays video games. It's not making the statement that video games themselves are bad. The video game that the film presents to you, however, oh boy, like,
Not a big fan? Don't you want to play it?
have you, Gary, ever heard, this latest craze amongst the youngsters? It's called the internet message boards.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there's that. But it's much cooler to meet in a virtual room, right?
it is. Yeah, I too have seen Second Life once. It's not like that. You can't. God fucking damn it! You can't really eavesdrop personal communication in a internet message board.
What was that
It's
super shitty game that was played on your browser from Columbus? Oh god.
What, Happo Hotel? Yeah, it's not like this place. Let me tell you.
Yeah, well, this has a little bit more advanced graphics for starters.
It is an artistic representation of what Happo Hotel is. You can physically banish people with mind barriers. But yeah, I really thought that what in the end really made Suicide Room was the ending. As mentioned, there were a lot of points where I was really worried about the direction the film was going to take. The biggest one for me was the moment close to the end when Dominic is getting the pills, and he even does that the whole goddamn life is the most precious gift you have, and how can you give it up? You're so selfish.
Yeah,
speech.
I wanted to actually tackle that one. It's quote, actually, I don't understand people who kill themselves. One's got to have courage to live. They are cowards. Narcissistic egoists who think the whole world revolves around them. How can you give away the most precious gift you have? How can you do it to yourself and your loved ones? I don't understand that. I don't want to. You live to give others as much as you can. End quote. This, I hope, is not the director's thought process. But what is the director's thought process in putting it here? I believe it's not something that we should agree on, right?
Most definitely should not agree on this. Since you asked what was cringe, this most definitely was cringe. I was ready to gouge my eyes out when this happened. But once again, to showcase the ending, the reason why I think this scene in the end works, why it does not take the film down, this is what was the biggest red flag that popped up. And the reason why I'm so positive with the film is precisely because, as disclosed, Dominic fucking kills himself at the end of the film, which frames this as not a real statement.
Yeah.
At least to me. This is something that he simply spills to the shrink so that he can get the pills for himself. And I do think that, like, when I talk about restraint, when I talk about the danger, the extreme danger that the film could go into a completely wrong direction, this is the biggest example of it.
Well, Dominic says this line as a bit of anger towards Sylvia as well.
I didn't really get the anger at that point. Like, that was not my reading.
It was my reading because Sylvia started to feel really uncomfortable with the words.
Well, that she did. That she did. But I didn't think... it's a piece of art, so one can't declare his reading correct over the next guys. That's how we read it. You know, it's completely valid. I just didn't read it that way myself.
Kind of funny, by the way, if you think about the whole internet, because the guy was connected to the internet for, let's say, almost 100 days, if you want to think it that way. Now the parents think like, oh, maybe we should disconnect this guy, and then again, what could be the consequences of that? Should they disconnect Dominique or not? I kept kind of battling with this. Probably yes, to get the situation solved in some way, and hoping that he will not immediately try to kill himself.
Well, once again, really hard to answer. In Dominique's specific case, perhaps disconnecting the internet was the correct choice to make. Then again, Dominic was a goddamn jackass who didn't realize that he's 18, which means that he could have done an internet provider agreement of his own and have his completely own internet.
Oh, it was 2011, I mean. Maybe.
Well, the film makes a repeated point how Dominic is an adult and now can, decide for his own. So he is in legal capacity to have his very own internet connection that his dad can't stop him from using.
I think it's just a thing that if Dominique, he kind of counted on that. If he would have taken his own internet connection to the room, then he would have a hell of a fun time to get rid of that contract once he wants to end it. Because in Poland, you just simply do not sign off your internet contract.
That could be. Perhaps the internet provider would have come after Dominic beyond the grave. Like, you still owe us, 5 months for payments for internet.
Yeah, or the provider would have been like, well, in order to make this connection work, we need to provide you a new modem, so we need to come in, and he would have been like, no one's gonna come in here. I don't know.
Then again, when it comes to the film and it depicting working solutions in the situation when your kid has barricaded himself into his room and won't come out. Dominic's dad most definitely should have beaten the wife much earlier, because that apparently is the one trick that gets Dominic out of the room.
That's true.
Yeah, domestic violence for the win.
Yeah.
Wife beating has been vilified for nothing for all these years.
Comes out. Father, who is played by Krzysztof Pieczynski, has appeared in over 50 films since '79. Also, some may know him from Jack Strong, Polish political thriller about Ryszard Kuklinski, who was a Polish army colonel in American Central Intelligence Agency during Cold War. Perhaps we should also mention Sylvia, because you are kind of saying good things about Sylvia, played by Roma Gonziorowska, born in 1981 in Bydgoszcz, and is an actress and fashion designer. Hasn't acted in quite a while, but I believe fashion is doing well. Now kind of connecting Sala samobójców with the sort of sequel, Hejter, which is kind of some kind of a Marvel extended universe thing. In the Polish title you have the Sala samobójców Hejter, but these are quite different movies, but they tackle with some similar themes.
They do. Both films kind of deal with the topic of internet and social media, its effect on people's lives and the society. Also, there's the disconnect, the societal disconnect between groups of people and individuals.
Yeah, the things that connect all of these films, we can probably are going to talk about that. Sala samobójców deals with the topic of the suicide, being an outcast, mental health problems, and social media playing a big part. The Hejter as well, it's about being an outcast, I would say, and mental health issues, pushing somebody to a corner, social media and video games, and society in a kind of a crisis, more so in The Hejter.
Yeah, and since we are tying these films together, I think that this might be something that, well, we can also bring in once again Miasto 44, even though in Miasma's case this didn't work.
Miasto.
But Miasto, well, fuck it, Warsaw 44.
Yeah.
But we were kind of asking why in Warsaw 44 the main character Stefan does not exactly work. And I kind of would think that it actually would be because of the attempt at unifying theme in Komasa's films. Like we mentioned, Suicide Room and The Hejter, they deal with some form of disconnect. And both films take a pretty critical look on humanity itself. And I think that Warsaw 44 was also attempting to do the critical look, as that seems to be the main statement that Jan Komasa constantly makes. He makes it in his short film, he makes it in Corpus Christi and Hejter and Suicide Room. All of these films are actually pretty critical of humanity and the world surrounding the main characters, also the main characters themselves. But there is kind of this critical, judgmental take on the world from Komasa. And with Warsaw 44, perhaps because it was supposed to be an anniversary film for the actual uprising, perhaps because it was such a big budget feature, or something like that, the Komasa, who as an artist wants to be critical, all of a sudden found himself not really finding who to be critical of. Warsaw 44 is really critical of Nazis, but then again, being critical of Nazis is like the easiest stunt in the world you can do. So if Komasa as an artist wants to be a critical person, Nazis don't necessarily cut it for him. So he needs another target to who to criticize also. And perhaps in Warsaw 44, for the aforementioned reasons, he couldn't criticize the movement, the uprising itself, that harshly. So the only tool left for him would be the main character of the film, Stefan. And that actually could be the reason why Stefan, in the end, in the film, is quite the horrible shitbag that he is. Because Komasa feels that he has to criticize someone else.
As well.
Yeah, as well, not just the Nazis.
But are you making a reference that in The Hater there is no clear point of criticizing?
In Hejter, there is a really clear point of criticizing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things to criticize that he does criticize in the film. So, yeah, for me, I could say the most interesting product from Jan Komasa in many ways. The Hater was released in Poland on 6th March 2020. Who was in the cinemas? Me! Just like a week before the pandemic hit in the way that it shut down all the cinemas. So I was one of those sort of lucky ones who got to see it on the screen in the theater. So yeah, this was one of the first films that really suffered due to the COVID-19 attacking the cinemas. And to mitigate these losses, of course, the film was then acquired by Netflix. And hopefully that's been profitable. For sure it has generated a lot of online buzz because of this Netflix appearance. And people have gone blindly into the film many times from all over the world and have provided tons of positive feedback as well. I hope this is working very well for Jan Komasa. The film recently won the Best International Narrative Feature on Tribeca Film Festival. As the lead actor we have Maciej Musiałowski, comes from a family of artists once again. He started his career basically in the TVN series Druga Szansa, The Second Chance, from 2016 to 2018. And in the following years, as mentioned, did some Ultraviolet TV series with Jan Komasa and God Genetyczny TV series from 2020. Won recognition from critics for his role in Hejter. This is his kind of big breakthrough. Beata is the reappearing character in this film. Was also in the Suicide Room. Played by Agata Kulesza. Has been acting since the early 90s. She played a part in the film Ida, which was the first Polish film that ever won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Definitely a must-see for anyone interested in Polish cinema. Born in Szczecin, near the German border in the north. Alright, what the fuck is going on in Sala samobójców Hejter?
Well, it essentially is a case study on exactly why Facebook and Facebook marketing are the absolute bottom of humanity.
That is one really interesting point that the film is tackling with.
Yeah, did you say that The Hater is political movie or politically topical movie is kind of an understatement. This is very much a film that stems from the political discourse that we are now having, even globally, and a film that very much sips from the fountain that was the Trump administration, and anything that went into the administration before and during its time.
Yeah, social media plays a big role in this movie again. And here it kind of tells of how dangerous tool the weapons of mass posting, in a sense, can be. Kind of estranging people, making people confused, and splitting people into extreme camps.
Yeah. To summarize Hater really quickly, it's a story of Tomas, who is a law student who gets kicked out of the law school because of plagiarism, and well, his studies have been funded by a family that is close friends with his dad, and upon his being expelled from the school, Thomas kind of a force or nothing. He loses his kind of a station in that friendly family's eyes, and becomes a disgrace to those people. Thomas, who perhaps is also suffering from mental health problems.
I would say.
Yeah, it's a possibility that then he's just, absolute shitbag of a human being. He falls into this PR company who does, well, essentially like targeted online bullying.
Yeah.
Somebody has a product that is competing with another person's product, and the PR company, was it PR Boss or what was the company's name, specializes in the end creating harassment and fake news campaigns that target to that product or individual, so that they lose footing on social media and has to withdraw. And Thomas is signed a political campaign. There's a major elections are coming up, and there are two competing candidates, and Thomas is hired to essentially undermine and sabotage the liberal candidate's campaign, to do whatever it takes to cast the candidate in the bad light so that he loses the election. Thomas also sees this as an opportunity to take revenge on the friendly family that had previously financed his studies, because he fears that has been betrayed by that family.
That was kind of interesting because it's showing you how many factors can come into play in kind of anything. After all, you see only a small fraction via the news, for example, of what the hell is going on in politics. Here, the politics are getting played into very murky direction, thanks to a personal conflict that didn't really have anything to do with politics per se, but then it got transferred into politics for vengeance.
Yeah, the main target for Thomas is the family. He wants to somehow hurt and destroy the family.
Yeah.
There's a case of lost pride, and also, well, the case of lost, a target of one-sided affection.
When it comes to this right-wing political opponent to the left-wing opponent, let's say, I couldn't help but just laugh when I saw this. And he has these rounded glasses, and he looks totally like the Prime Minister of Poland, Mateusz Morawiecki. So I think this is making completely a statement about the fucking backstabbing and authoritarian ways in which the PIS government is running things in the country. So
yeah, it's also kind of making very strong statement about, the political atmosphere in Poland by everyday Poles at this moment.
Yeah, calling the right-wing protesters debili or fucking idiots.
Overall, showing the protesters themselves. Hejter is a movie that plays with the themes like Islamization, Islamophobia, the immigrant crisis that we also experienced in Finland, and overall the rise of violent mentalism against some group of people, and the clash between the right and the left.
Yeah, totally, which is dramatically clashing in Poland as well. And it's easy to see for Polish people from one side to fall on this rhetoric that, this guy is bringing the whole Islamizacja in our country and destroying us. And when it comes to Tomasz, though, I don't see him as inherently evil in the film or completely psychotic by any stretch. There are several scenes which show that he's an empathetic character who also cares for Gabi, the girl. And Tomasz, of course, is is not a great guy also. He spies on people. He goes ahead with his employer's wishes to destroy people's careers just like that. Which raises this kind of psychotic point where, as you mentioned, the same company is now running two campaigns that are totally opposite to each other. So on one side they are supporting the left-wing candidate, and on the other side they're trying to destroy him. And Thomas has to play both roles, or he doesn't have to play, but he does play them, kind of takes the work from his colleague Camille so that he can start to, destroy this family that is causing him a heartbreak and is related to the campaign of the left-wing candidate. Yeah, it goes in a way that Thomas is trying to help the left-wing candidate, but then because he wants to do this revenge, then he starts to play both of the roles for him and against the candidate. And he can do that, and he takes the job role of the against from this Camille guy, and he basically logs in with Camille's passwords into the computer and starts running both of the campaigns.
What was your take? Was he ever really helping the left-wing candidate, simply because he wanted to do that, or because it was his job, or was it just, a way for him to get closer to the candidate so that he can cause more harm to the family?
My reading is that, in my opinion, he starts to kind of infiltrate the candidate project because he wants to get this revenge going on. But on the other hand, when he starts doing that, he starts to care for the candidate, and they become closer, and he becomes basically kind of split personality in a way, where he wants to help him, but then he also has to be against him.
Yeah, the reason why I was interested in your reading is because my reading of Thomas is quite different. I saw Thomas as an irredeemable asshole. Like you said that he's not a completely bad guy, and to me he was nothing but a bad guy. I didn't see basically any redeeming qualities in the guy, and I was kind of certain that for example the left-wing candidate and Thomas's work under him is something that could kind of showcase where our readings differentiate.
Yeah, he's a very, very bad guy, Thomas, but from the expressions of him, you can tell that he also cares for the character, but not enough to, do any good deeds by the end. Like, there is this empathy and apathy split all the time, in my opinion. So he spies on the people and tries to destroy careers. For one part, the film touches on the topic of throwing your morals out of the window in favor of following the orders. And it's an interesting topic for someone who has worked, for example, in a call center like me. This is kind of what you do. You need to switch off your emotions and do what you're fucking told. Sell, or here, destroy lives. But it's a very kind of a shrapnel-y story in a sense that there's a lot of points of criticizing. It tells the story of the shrapnelled reality, if you will, also, because we don't know what to believe anymore. We don't know who are the good guys and the bad guys, so to speak. There is this juxtapose that comes from the social media for the regular people. There's the violence that it brings. There's the psychotic behavior aspect of Thomas, if you will.
There's also the fact that the liberal family that Thomas targets his revenge also is a pretty shitty household when you really look at it.
Yeah, there's no really good guys in this film, right?
Well, yeah, not outside of, well, maybe Pavel, the only decent person in the entire story.
Yeah, that guy is actually pretty likable. It's a story of manipulation and provocation, and how it's so easy to shift the public narrative here with the power of social media.
It's also a very shadowy film in the way how the narrative works. There's constantly like all the factors in the film are constantly trying to somehow one up each other, and there's a you're never exactly clear who is pulling and what strings, but who gave the original like the orders for the PR company, who is the original client of the company, and what is the aim goal, what is the end goal of the company, what is the end goal of the client.
There's a lot of shadowy ways in which this company is working, of course, and it's pretty terrible the way that it's treating its employees, like this so-called Pocahontas character, and everything that it kind of does is kind of hush hush, not necessarily written in the agreements in any way.
Yeah, like this is a story where Thomas spends a notable time just trying to figure out who he really, in the end of the day, is working for.
And trying to figure out maybe who he is. This is a young guy that kind of gets kicked out of the school and then gets adrift. What now? Who am I? Where do I stand? And it's kind of also, I think it tells how important it is to understand that it can take only one provoked, so-called mentally ill or sociopathic or psychopathic individual who can influence our reality when given the chance in a position of power. He takes it really easily, that pedestal, and people die. It also tells that there are multiple reasons for any results. It's not only one dumb fuck of a prime minister. It's a lot of stuff happening here at once. There's a lot in the, let's say, in the invisible spectrum. As I said, there's aspects that you don't see, and how much would we save lives and how much faster would we progress if people would have some kind of a basic training in media reading skills that we have also discussed in the podcast before. Human basic psychology. To get a grasp of that, your outlook on world simply cannot be truncated and apathetic and angry. It cannot be that if you have a basic grasp of human behavior, the reasons for certain behavior, and how we can understand each other better. It comes from understanding basic fucking psychology.
Yeah, if something the film shows exactly how easy it is manipulate even large masses of people, and how easy it's to drive individuals to do incomprehensible acts of violence.
It's so easy that it's really scary. This film is very current. And I suppose it can be current at any moment of time, but it certainly resonates during the Trumpistan eras, from which we hopefully can move onwards. But I'm not so convinced that we have moved anywhere quite yet from that.
Well, we won't really for quite some time.
And it's much thanks to social media. Look at what happened now that Donald Trump has been kicked off from the platforms. Like, of course, it's more invisible once again that what is actually the people's feelings, and will people follow him when he might re-emerge on some of his own platform or whatnot. But the amount of influence that he had via just Twitter. Here we also tackle homosexuality a bit, but here it's unfortunately used as a weapon against the politician and kind of left at that. Something that works against him. There may not be anything else to touch upon in homosexuality in this film. It's just something easy that you can still use against people in Poland. A very big discussion topic also right now in the country.
Well, it's a big discussion topic, I would say globally. When it comes to elections, when it comes to how voting behavior and well, how political candidates work, it's kind of it's a mess. It's a combination of multiple different factors. The candidate has to be human but not weak. He has to be controlling, but not overtly so. Candidate can be a racist, but, he can't have a wife that cheats on him, for example. When it comes to using sexuality as a weapon, well, it's not really that long time. It's less than 80 years ago when in Finland, presidential candidate's homosexuality was used as a campaign weapon against him. Most likely not as in Hejter, driven by the opposite campaign through a PR company, but by everyday voters. The legitimate question brought up back in those days was that, can we really have a gay president?
Yeah.
And as it turned out, no, we couldn't.
Apparently not yet. But yeah, it's not something that I think you can use in Finland as a weapon against a candidate anymore. I think that's rather laughable in 2021. Here.
I wouldn't be holding my breath, really. Like I said, the previous time is less than 8 years ago. I don't believe that we have really progressed that far. How effective weapon it would be,
Yeah.
Hard to say, but it was weaponized just recently. And it did work at least for, X number of people.
Yeah, I don't really see that there would be a similar type of discussion with your staff if you would be going into a gay bar and somebody would find out and film you. Then sure, there would be people that would probably not vote for you, but would it be such of a big, oh, I fucked up type of a situation? Well, maybe. Not the same effect though here.
I don't know. I mean, the whole, basically, the candidate who won those elections, his wife got weaponized by his own campaign as a positive driving force, how to control people to vote for the said candidate. Not dropping any names here, but yeah, there was there was a consistent media and also like pre-scripted role manipulation that campaign played or used while the campaign was in effect.
Yeah.
Once possible voters started to react positively towards the wife, that the wife's media presence was automatically was raised. It became larger. They also started to much more clearly control and handcraft that media presentation. Also the public presentation. And then it became a question exactly how much stage time we can give to the wife versus the actual candidate. And that was like calculated. It's this many minutes. That was how the game was played back then. And I really don't see that, well, we have progressed that far yet in Finnish politics from those times.
No, but still we are far ahead from Poland. The director touches on really brave topics, I would say. Suicide, well, that's kind of universally brave to raise it on discussion. But then religion is a really dangerous territory in Poland, as it's really a very influential and big part of the country. And then touching on politics and homosexuality, and mainly politics now in the Hejter. That's brave and very timely, as I said, in a country where, for example, we have this massive demonstrations against the abortion law that was put in place just recently. There were incredible numbers of people showing up in Warsaw from different parts of the country to show in opposition against the decision to basically make abortion impossible in the country. And a country that is still very opposed to homosexuality, or very opposed to so-called other outside influences. A country that thinks that has certain values that they have been holding for a long time. Now there are things like homosexuality that are outside influences that are destroying the country. and you have now a country essentially where you have the LGBT no-go zones, LGBT-free zones, as you might have seen those signs next to some small villages around the country, which of course EU has denounced. You can do this shit, and they have taken some of the payments away from these villages who have made themselves or declared themselves officially as LGBT-free zones. Nevertheless, EU should be doing a hell of a lot more than just sending angry letters.
Then again, it's a question exactly how much and what EU can do. It can't mobilize the army, and invade Poland.
No. But what is the Hejter, Henrik? In the Hejter, it's a hater who has been manufactured by the society, created by a sick society. Hatred brewing hate. There's a lot of hatred in this film. There's this hatred against different groups of people, hatred against the Islamization, so to speak.
Also hate against the family that has been close to your dad, or is close to your dad, or something. Connection never truly established here.
What do you think about the ending?
In what form? Like what happens at the ending? How does it end? Or was it good? Or
yeah, or how does it leave you feeling? Like who won? Nobody won.
I think that at the end Thomas wins in the film. Not as spectacular as he was hoping for, but well, he manages to keep his job, and he manages to get the revenge on the family. That the family is now emotionally broken.
Yeah, the family daughter dies actually.
Yeah, in the attack that Thomas orchestrates through his machinations.
And god damn, that is a dark attack.
It was surprisingly realistic, I must admit. The CGI blood took some oomph away from it.
Miasto 44, same thing.
Yup. But as a scene itself, the attack was well pretty realistically portrayed in the sense how I would believe or vision that type of attack would happen and play out.
And I would say that he is not a complete asshole also because I think he tries to save Rudnitsky. Well, Rudnitsky is already dead, but he tries to do something, and he comes off as the hero. Of course, you can just say that he's trying to protect his own ass and make him look like the hero, and you see also that he has some police investigating on him, not completely convinced that he is completely flawless here. But as the public campaign goes now there, that Tomasz is the hero.
Yeah, so he essentially gets away with everything that he does. He achieves most of his goals. The question, does he get Gabby at the end? That's left open and unanswered. The possibility is there, but it's never made clear what happens next between the two of them. But that would be kind of the only defeat Thomas at the end really receives.
Yeah, not a happy ending, and kind of leaves you in a note that there's actually a lot of small aspects that is fucked up in the political and societal nature of our world today. And I think it's kind of open interpretation in the end. What happens now, like with the Gabi, like you said. Such is the protagonist, Tomasz. Weren't they playing the Beethoven Symphony No. 9, the fourth part, the so-called Die Hard music during the murder scene, the attack? So it's the same that they use in Die Hard in some sense.
I believe they were, although I have to confess that I'm not versed enough in the classical music that I can be 100% certain.
Yeah, but it's this. The faces are being flooded with light after breaking the seventh lock and opening the vault. Is it quickies now?
Well, we can try to have a Facebook poll about quickies. All of a sudden it tumbles in the discussion about Islamization.
Okay, Corpus Christi first. Just a little quick look at it. We already tackled it in one of our episodes. If you want to get the proper treatment for Corpus Christi, please go listen to that episode of ours. There's male nudity in all of his films. Something that I noticed, and the church in tons of shots in the background in this film. Something that I didn't think about when we were discussing it first. The central character in the film is someone who kind of heals the town like Jesus, and then yeah, it's kind of like Jesus on a cross in the end. He's just thrown to the wolves, the poor guy who heals everybody. And the nice trick of how the film kind of appeals to all, regardless of whether you are a believer or not. I believe that's a film that you should watch. No forgiving to be found by the end. The opposite kind of story. Instead of setting everything on fire, there are people to be healed. Although they do set up a fire by the end. I don't know what's up with that. Well, let's set up the fire. Special mention for an actor goes to...
Well, from the 3 movies that we've talked about today, I perhaps go with Agatha Kulesa.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I don't know about the pronunciations, sorry about that, but essentially, the actress who plays Pieta.
Yeah, Kulesha, yeah. It's kind of a tough one. There's a bunch of great actors in the leads, but Maciej Musiałowski kind of succeeds in kind of playing this sort of a confused and psychotic and empathetic part in all of the same package as Tomasz Giemsa in The Hejter.
Well, when it comes to the 3 main leads in these 3 movies, Maciej is the strongest one, most definitely.
Yeah, maybe also a character who gets the most to do. Is not maybe as flat as some of the characters in Suicide Room.
Yeah, I wasn't too impressed about about Dominique's actor. He wasn't bad. I'm not saying that.
No, I think the actor is really fucking good, but the character maybe needs some development there, a bit more.
Yeah. In Suicide Room, he was overshadowed by the actress who played Sylvia, and when it comes to Warsaw 44, there I think that we have the weakest male lead of well, Komasa's entire filmography.
Yeah, I don't entirely believe that. Sometimes his facial expression seems off, or maybe it's just a resting face. I don't know.
To me, it was mostly the resting face. There are moments where he shines out. So some of the heaviest dramatic scenes, like for example, the moment when Stefan witnesses the executions of his mom and the little brother. The actor Joseph really sells the emotion, but to me it is the resting face, which I kind of felt was weak through most of the film.
What resonated with you the most or the least in the products of Jan Komasa?
That would be the emotional distance between the characters and the society. That's to me that was the main kind of a compiling theme or force in these films, and perhaps strongestly felt in Suicide Room, Hejter being really close second.
Yeah, Jan Komasa is kind of masterful in putting people from, or characters from different backgrounds and kind of making some issue built around them. He does it pretty well. For me, maybe the chaotic nature of the Hater in the sense that it has no proper goodies or baddies. It's very multifaceted. In one adjective, how would you describe these films individually?
I don't know. Individually, as a group, I would say sad.
Okay.
That's like my main adjective. Essentially, to all Komasa's films.
Sala samobójców. Heartbreaking. Miasto 44. Well, juvenile, but in a good way as well. For me, I had some fun, maybe inappropriate fun, but Corpus Christi, healing. It's a healing movie, I would say. Hejter, topical. Henrik, would you consider to return to the products of Jan Komasa in the future?
Not all of them. Most likely, Warsaw 44 will be a film that I won't be revisiting. The rest of his filmography, yup. I do think that these are films that, well, they have a message that carries over even after the current times have passed. That's true also for Hater. Even though it's really topical, it's not to a point that it would lose its point. Once we are 10 or 15 years into the future. And most likely these are also films that I will showcase to others.
Okay. That's nice to hear that this podcast has been useful to you in some way. Or maybe not. I don't know. I think this is a very capable director. I will be happy to rewatch any of these films, apart from Miasto 44, because I'm not too fond of it. I've seen it now like 3 times already. But Corpus Christi and The Hater, they kind of are my highlights. They have interesting topics, and they also deliver the message effectively. And I kind of like the non-endings of Jan Komasa. It leaves you thinking. Miasto 44 or Sala samobójców, they may not be as successful in delivering their meaning, but I like samobójców. Any favorite quotes?
No.
Well, there is one, isn't there? Ale ja wiem, jaki jest plan dnia. Ja pierdolę ten twój plan dnia, bo ja znam plan dnia na pamięć, rozumiesz? Ty masz tutaj być i masz na mnie czekać, ponad mnie się czeka ze mną się jest, kurwa, i mnie się planuje cały czas, rozumiesz? Że mną się jest i że mną się, kurwa, jest cały czas, rozumiesz? Dobra, sam tego chciałem, wracam do domu. Sam!
And as the counter argument goes, you are just spoiled, not gay.
Very spoiled. But I love that performance. Dude's on fire. Do you think the films have any staying power or legacy? Will anyone remember these products?
I do. They do. Why? That's a different question. Suicide Room, I can see it's going to have a staying power with the teens with whom it originally broke. Most likely will be a film that will be visited by but the current and coming generations of teens. Also, most likely a film that I can see will have a place when it comes to discussion about artistic representations of mental illness or suicidal tendencies. Hater has a lasting appeal, especially due thanks to its at currently political nature. This most likely will be a film that will be remembered as one of the cinematic depictions of Trump era or the current era in Poland. But also because the narrative itself is one that kind of traverses time. It's even like we now talk about it as a political film and current film, but the story has the power to withstand even the current day events. Corpus Christi, I would say, also has the lasting power simply on the merits of the film itself. Warsaw 44, I'm fairly certain that that's mandatory viewing in Poland, so it will last on that merit. Outside of Poland, I don't really know. No, I would say when it comes to Komasa's works, Warsaw 44 is the one that has the least lasting power.
Yeah, I don't know that there are much better mandatory watching is if you want to see some artistic interpretations of World War II from Poland. So, but yeah, Jan Komasa, already a household name in Poland, and via Corpus Christi, will be a director who will be a director who we will remember and who will be able to sell his back catalog with no issues, I'm sure, as the audience grows as well. But after Hejter, I'm kind of fascinated what's the next project from the guy. I don't know. Maybe there's already some rumblings. I wouldn't be surprised if he'd do some kind of a big blockbuster for Hollywood next. Certainly the guy is international now.
He's going to do the Avengers.
That's what I'm afraid of, please. No. Hopefully it won't be a studio mandated shit show. Would you recommend Jan Komasa's films, Henrik?
I would. Yes, strongly. The one caveat being Warsaw 44. I'm kind of mixed. I kind of would like to recommend it because I felt that it didn't work. As an example, watch this funny film about Second World War atrocities, but no recommendation for Warsaw. The rest of them, yeah, they get recommendations.
Yep. Well, we are on the same lines. I'm gonna be a little rough on Miasto, and since I wasn't really able to find a compelling point for the film, I think it's a bit of a drag. But I have no problem with the visual storytelling, as I've said. Then again, Miasto 44 was what opened the floodgates for my Jan Komasa experiences. So, is there some kind of order you would put these films?
Really hard to say. Something that also affects here, makes me biased, is the fact that Corpus Christi was my first film from Komasa, so I'm perhaps naturally biased because of that. Perhaps Corpus Christi, then Suicide Room, and Hejter would be on a place 3.
Okay. Yeah, it's really hard to say. For me, maybe the Hejter speaks the most with its themes. Corpus Christi would be my second one. Suicide Room could even go on a higher position, but Suicide Room is gonna be on the third now, and Miasto 44 as the last. Complete the sentence, Monsieur. You really know you're watching Jan Komasa's filmography when?
When you log into the Second Life and immediately want to kill yourself through crucifixion because of those damn Islamists.
I still, Henrik, think we should make that Jan Komasa a fantasy film. Do you remember when I mentioned that in Corpus Christi episode, that we could kind of mix all of the films of his to make some kind of a stupidity?
Now that I have seen the rest of the films, I can say that what would result would most definitely be stupidity.
You really know you're watching Jan Komasa's films when all of his male leads strip on camera and stare into the void and shed tears on an extended special close-up, followed by a youthful soundtrack, sometimes purposefully misplaced in an entertaining fashion. Less entertaining for Henrik. What did you think about the soundtracks of the films? Did you enjoy any of these?
I didn't pay too much attention to the soundtracks, I have to confess.
Yeah, something that raised to my attention in Hejter was the Here She Comes Again DJ Antonio remix from Röyksopp. Such a beautiful band name. There is the Turn Me On from Wet Fingers. Yeah, that's kind of the theme tune of the film, I would say. It plays in the club in the end as well. Okay, that's kind of Jan Komasa. Did you have fun? I had.
Well, I'm still here.
Still here.
Still here. Haven't opened the medicine bottle yet.
No, and we don't have time for that. No time to die, since next week it will be another great pleasure to talk with Henrik about fantastic cinema. In the next episode, we will either watch Steven Seagal's...
Oh, fuck me. Yeah, where are that fucking pills?
Surely we can go to South Korea, because this could... If you let me do everything here, this will be just the South Korea, the podcast.
It starts to become South Korea, the podcast.
Okay, so next week we are going to the Philippines, Henrik, for the first time in this podcast. Thank you for joining us. See you in a fortnight.
Until then.
Siis Biedronkahan, se on se kaikista suosituin ruokakauppa Puolassa, että mä yhdistän sen niinku suoraan siihen. Biedronkka, mikä tarkoittaa leppäkerttu, ja sitten sillä on semmoinen leppäkerttu-logo. Niin mulla on vähän eri Biedronkat koko ajan mielessä. It's played actually by Józef Onko tossa toi vänkä? On. Józef Pawłowski.
Se on aivan ihan vehkeästä ja Jafarin paluu on aivan täyttä kusta ja Aladdin 3:nenkaan ei ole mikään mestariteos ja Steven Seagal ei ole hyvää elokuvaa tehnyt edes vahingossa.